from the News Channel 5 Network. This is OpenLine.
Hello everyone, welcome to OpenLine. Glad you're with us tonight. We're talking about the stresses of being a caregiver. And this is something that happens way more than we all realize. And I hope tonight people will call in and share their stories. Because again, there are many people that are going through this that are not seen or heard. And I think we could all benefit from hearing from you. We're talking about this because there is a new documentary out. The name of the documentary, Unseen: How We Are Failing Parent Caregivers. There you see a picture of it, and we are lucky enough to have with us the producers of that documentary, Amanda Dyer and Tom Dyer, who put this documentary together. Thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right, I've watched it. It's very powerful. It's very moving. And what you're talking about is the struggles that caregivers go through, parents of disabled children. What made you tackle this topic? What brought you to this topic? And either one of you can take this.
Yeah, we actually just kind of stumbled into this by accident. We are not parents or caregivers, so it wasn't our personal story. We just decided a few years ago that we wanted to create a documentary, and we were going to keep our eyes and ears open for a topic. And about that time, we stumbled across a family on Facebook that lived outside the Nashville area. That kind of mentioned that they thought a documentary would be a powerful tool to really pull back that curtain about what it means to be a parent caregiver. So that kind of sparked our attention. We ended up meeting up with them. They just started telling us stories about their life, sharing details, and it just, really just blew our minds. We just had no idea kind of what was going on behind the scenes, and we immediately recognized that there was an opportunity for a documentary to really make an impact on this issue, to kind of show that behind the scenes and open those doors to what some of the realities that caregivers are experiencing. I mean, some of the numbers, there's 16.8 million people in America that are caring for a child with a disability. 43% of special needs caregivers report experiencing high stress and all sorts of issues that go along with it. What were some of the takeaways for you as you were doing this and now that you're done with it? And I'll ask you that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was so surprising to us. Like Amanda said, we came at this as outsiders. It's not something that we had experience with. And so we had to learn a lot very quickly. It started as a research project, and we just kept hearing the same types of stories over and over from these families. And it became very clear very quickly how many families and caregivers there are out there that are struggling with things like this and go through these tough times, so many more than we ever knew. And the very interesting thing was when we started getting some of these responses in, as you see in the film, there's a lot of other voices. We follow one family story, but there's a lot of other voices as well. And the similarities between the stress and the things that they go through was just so obvious right out of the gate. And it was just very surprising that there's this whole group of families going through this that are our neighbors that we just don't know. And so that was tough to learn, but it was rewarding and to be able to help amplify their voices a little bit. It's a story that needs to be told, and people need to be aware of it. And the couple that you're highlighting, they're from Tennessee. They're a remarkable story, and I'm going to let you tell it, but there's several things that stood out to me. Obviously, so they have a disabled child. They were told, it's powerful in the film when the mom says during the ultrasound, it kind of got quiet, and the person went and got a doctor, and the doctor came in and said, okay, this is a serious situation. They had the baby, and they're raising the baby. And it's great to have the baby, great to raise the baby, but now the baby is a teenager, and there are all of these challenges. And society, she says at one point, you realize the world is not made for your child and how hard that is. And so
There's so many things. Let's talk about that family. Walk us through. I gave away some of it, but there's even more. I mean, tell us about that family.
Yeah, they're really awesome. They're a blended family. So Jess and Ryan, their first spouses each passed away very close to the same time. They ended up finding each other and blending their families. And yeah, so they have 7 children, and actually 8, right?
I think so.
8
yeah,
children.
8, because 1 together, yeah.
Yeah, 8 children, and then one of those is Lucas, who has profound disabilities. Yeah, and like you said, when he was a baby, they didn't expect him to live, so they're just overjoyed that he was born, and that people from the community, the church gathered around, were very supportive, helped them, and it was great. But then as he got older, they moved locations, had less built-in family support, and as just time went on and things got more complicated, with him being older, stronger, having a few more challenges, the help really just started to fall away. And they realized that, they tried to go to different places and they wouldn't get the level of support that he needed. They just couldn't find other caregivers to hire to even come to their house and help. So it really just became them in isolation, trying to make do just with their own family, and that's when things got really difficult, and they just felt like they're at the end of their rope.
What is an answer here? And I like how also in the film, so you highlight that family, and then there are all these others that kind of give their testimonial. What do we need to do as a society? What should come as a result of this? Now,
yeah, I mean, right out of the, from the beginning, our goal was not to think that we could make this film and solve these problems for these people. Our goal from the beginning was awareness, was to take this this issue, what these families are going through that we learned about, and share that with other people from the perspective of people that didn't know about it, so that hopefully other people like us would learn and be aware and sensitive to that. And so awareness, and really, it's not a happy watch. It's a very serious watch, and we wanted to do that because we wanted people to be emotionally, connected with this family, to kind of feel some of the things that they're going through, so that viewers would be moved to then, take action in whatever way they can. And there are options for that. But the biggest thing I think that we hear when we talk to a lot of these families is they just want support from their friends, from their neighbors, from people they go to church with, people in the community. I mean, there's one point in the film where she says she knows that people see them, but she does feel unseen. So it's more of a they're being recognized, but not necessarily being noticed or accepted, and so just as simple as on the individual level, just like saying hello, or not shying away or trying to stay out of these families' way when they're in public, just being a good neighbor, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one thing that was reoccurring with all these families, for sure.
I mean, there's so many stats. 43% of caregivers report experiencing high stress. Yeah, I bet. And there's one who said he had a heart attack at age 30. I think the main character in the film went to the emergency room twice, but it wasn't anything to do with his heart. It's clearly just stress.
Yeah.
And the home is supposed to be a sanctuary, but it's just a difficult place. They're doing important work, obviously, but it's just so difficult. And so when you hear all of these stats, you read, 43% this, 30% that, 26% that. That's one thing. But then when you see that family, it takes it to a whole new level. There's something about the impact on the earning of a family that has a special needs child. And this family, again, what's the situation there?
Yeah, I always say you can't care about something you don't know about. So the first step was we had to just show some of these realities that we often don't see because caregiving happens at home. Yeah, in what you said about the him having to go to the doctor, and when you're living under this constant stress, when there's no relief, when you can't find respite care, when you can't find just a babysitter to get out of the house for a few hours, that's going to take a toll on your well-being, and it's also going to take a toll on your finances if you can't have a job, if you can't work outside the home, or if you have to take time off. unpaid time because you can't find any assistance, or if you have to leave the workforce altogether. You know, these are things that are just going to have a huge impact on your finances if you're trying to provide care for someone.
Yeah, I mean, we go into this in the film a little bit, but like most jobs are not set up for families like this that have a lifestyle or a need to do something that is different than the typical 9 to 5. I'm at work and then I'm at home. You know, for families that need a flexible time or a customized work schedule, it's not very many jobs out there that allow them to be successful in that while they're dealing with all the stuff that is absolutely necessary with their families.
And they talked about the struggle of trying to get their child into a camp. There's no camp. The struggle of trying to find caregivers who are typically not well paid, and they found them often not to be dependable, right? I mean, what about those struggles?
Yeah, that is probably the singular biggest issue that we heard from families over and over. It's that getting, you know, families, they love their children to death. I mean, they are so passionate about caring for and advocating for their children, but every parent needs a break. Everyone needs a break. It's just part of life. And if they know that they have a break or respite coming up, that can be the fuel they need to keep going. But if they don't see that on the horizon, that can be very overwhelming to know that to not think you're ever going to get a break. So I would say if there's one thing we could address, it would be finding a way to make respite more available for families. And yeah, like you said, if caregivers aren't paid very well, if they don't have workplace policies that allow them to also be, you know, caregivers for their families. There's so many issues that are making this complicated to solve. It's not an easy thing that we can solve tomorrow. But I think if there was one thing that we could focus on, it would be finding those respite opportunities, and that is a game changer for families.
Yeah, somebody goes to the emergency room and they say, this is stress and you need to take time for yourself and you need to figure out, you know, how to make life less stressful.
Yeah.
But that's
how
you know?
Yeah, and there's a section about self-care too, where, you know, we all hear self-care is so important. We need to be taking time for ourselves, and your own well-being is important. You know, you can't pour from an empty cup, that kind of thing. And caregivers that we talk to are like, yeah, I agree, that's right, but please tell me how I get self-care, how I make time for self-care when my loved one requires 24/7 care or has a complex medical need where someone needs to be on duty constantly and they can't, you know, there's not a nurse or someone available to do that. So how do those things happen when there's no support in place?
I think I see in here 1 in 5 children in Tennessee has a special health care need, chronic illness, or disability. 1 in 5.
Yeah, that's startling.
So yeah, so you have this one family, then you have testimonials from others. But again, before we go to break here and start taking calls, this is a huge issue, right? So this affects a lot of people, and you just kind of went into this. How big is it as you were getting into this and you realize how big it is? Is it kind of something that just people don't, unseen, right?
Yeah, I mean, the way that we started this project off, and you see this in the film, is all these other voices. We didn't know, right? And so we asked the community, we said, hey, send us your responses to these questions that we have. And people started sending us video messages in, and the number of video messages that we got, we were overwhelmed by. Just the number of people that A, had these experiences and had answers to them, but B, were willing to be that vulnerable about it. And so I think it's a couple things. I think, you know, they are so busy and they are so occupied with what they have to do, they can't get out and they can't speak up for themselves. They can't really, a lot of them don't have the energy or the capacity to advocate for themselves or to let people know a lot of times what they're going through or what they need. And so that was just a huge thing for us, was to be overwhelmed by this response just by the little bit of work that we did to put out some stuff online and say, hey, send us your messages and your answers to these questions. So I think there are, in our experience, there are so many more people, so many more families going through this than we ever thought. They go unseen.
And before we go to break, give us an example or two, no name or anything, but an example or two of what you found. Obviously, this family, and we've talked about them, but then you have all those testimonials. What are some other typical situations?
Do you have a good one?
I mean, I know, like you mentioned earlier, one of the guys that sent in, he said he had a heart attack at age 30, just because of the stress. And I mean, as someone who's 35, that is unimaginable.
Yeah.
You know, their story, I know, I don't know a ton about it, but I know that they experienced quite a lot of like physical property damage at their home because of their situation. And so it's things that you just can't even, as someone who does not have firsthand experience with it, it's just things that you can't imagine, and it's unpredictable. And so they need support in those ways that you know, you like Amanda said, you can't know it until you know it.
All right, we're going to take a break. That kind of sets the table for the discussion, an important discussion. I hope you will call in. There's the number, 615-737-PLUS. 615-737-7587. Are you going through something like this? Do you have something you'd like to share or ask or whatever? We'll take a break. Be back right after this.